What's the most awkward thing you've witnessed at a high school reunion? Story 1. A guy from our class passed away from cancer shortly before our 20th reunion. He was never super popular, but was pretty well known across our class. During the award speech section of the night, the lady, our class president, I think was trying to get the crowd to settle down for a moment of silence. You could tell it meant a lot to her as she started getting heated. The crowd started shushing one another, and it got just quiet enough to hear somebody say, "Geez, did somebody die?" or something. Story 2. At my 10th, the organizers gave awards to people for various reasons. One girl from our class was given an award for having the most kids of anyone there. She had 4 by different guys, which was part of the announcement. The look on her face as she slinked up to the podium said it all. Story 3. 10-year reunion held at a bar owned by former classmates started at 10 p.m. Owner told people adults over 21 only. People said they needed to bring their kids and were told no. Several people brought their babies and toddlers anyway. Parents drank like teenagers and the kids ran wild. Owner called cops who watched the parents be negligent. Parents escorted out by some cops, and their kids were taken out by others. Edits for clarification: original reunion was going to be at our high school, but less than 20 people bought tickets, so if it was canceled, a lot of us live not too far and see each other out and about anyway. We had a Facebook group for the event. So when it was canceled, the bar owner agreed to have something at his place, but we had to follow the laws since it was a bar and not a restaurant. Like no one under 21, he did ask people to leave with their kids and was cursed out. I heard one girl spat on him. So he called the cops. One of my friends, who was an organizer for the original event, tried watching the kids, and she pointed out their parents to the cops. When they arrived, the classmates were really drunk, to the point they couldn't have driven their kids home, and others were belligerent. Hence the arrests. Story 4. My wife at the time and I had dated all through HS in college. We married and had a child. We still had a few close friends we graduated with that were going as well. I would say there was about a 70 turnout. We had a good time, and everyone got pretty drunk. We all mingled, and my wife talked to a guy who she had cheated on me with right after HS. They didn't speak for more than 3 minutes. They hadn't spoke since that day, almost 10 years before. We had moved past it and had a family. At least that's what I thought. Less than a month after the reunion, I could tell that something wasn't right. When I asked her about it, she told me she wasn't happy and wanted a divorce. We had been together for a very long time, and I was devastated. After a week of feeling like I had failed and doing everything I could to win her back, I discovered she had been having an affair with that same guy. Story 5. Haven't had a high school reunion yet, but hey, race a fun one for my mom's 3rd reunion. She went with my dad back to her hometown for the reunion. My dad grew up in a different place, so he didn't know anybody there. Bored out of his mind, he decided to have some fun and found a way to discreetly ask someone who the biggest juvenile delinquent troublemaker was in their graduating class. Let's call him Albert Davis. So my dad went to the name tag table and found Albert Davis' name tag. He put it on and went around saying hi to everyone just to watch their reactions. Because most of them assumed that Albert Davis was in prison, my mom did not think it was funny. Story 6. Someone made a speech along the lines of, "To all of those that felt picked on or bullied, I have something to say to you." She then started a singlet at Go from Frozen. Story 7. At my 10th year HS reunion, a guy I hated and who hated me showed up and came directly toward me. Not saying anything at all to me, he then engaged the person standing right next to me on my left. He proceeded to move around the room, talking to literally everyone. There were only 33 people in my class, and stopping with the person on my right. Didn't so much as acknowledge my existence the whole rest of the day. It was super weird at the time, but many years later, it was the most memorable thing that happened. I laugh about it now. Edited to clarify. 10-year reunion. Story 8. I was there with a guy friend when he saw his ex. They approached each other, him going in for a hug and her extending her hand to shake. When they each realized what the other was doing, she put her arms out for a hug, and he extended his hand to shake. By the time they touched, it was just a jumble of hands and arms weirdly touching each other. He started by saying, "So, how have you been?" I just said, excuse me, and got the away from them. Story 9. I went to my wife's last reunion a few months ago. The day of the reunion, she got a call that it was canceled. Apparently, 5 years earlier, a classmate got creepy and stalkery with another classmate. The people organizing the reunion invited him not to show up. Then the guy posted on Facebook some vague threats. They did actually change the venue and have the reunion, but there were many people that couldn't be contacted with the updated info. Story 10. My friend said her cousin's high school reunion was really awkward because this guy ran up and kissed his high school girlfriend without her asking and then got in a fist fight with her husband. Did not turn out well from what I hear. Story 11. My mom's 35th high school reunion was at a bar that I frequent quite a bit. I walked in with my mom and went up to a bartender that I know to order a drink for my mom and I. He looked up at my mother and I and immediately got super shy and weird and then said, "You're the daughter of my mom's name, apparently." He had a huge crush on my mom in high school. And my uncle beat the out of him because he creeped my mom out. Very awkward indeed. Story 12, the captain of the football team, was a pretty sad sight. He looked like and was so proud of sneaking booze in with his flask. I mean, it was a cash bar, but the prices were reasonable. Story 13, I went with my wife to her reunion. I may have had one or three before arriving, and when I got there I remembered hearing a story of a guy who was my wife's third-grade boyfriend. Later in life, he had a rough time of things, drugs, alcohol, run-ins with the law, etc. As a joke, I wrote his name on my name badge and went about my business. Not long after, a rather strong and stocky woman turned around, looked at me, then at my name tag. When she saw the name, she looked up at me, screamed excitedly as loud as I've ever heard, bear hugged me while lifting me off the ground, and bit my neck. No blood, but decent bruise. Story 14, not me, but my BIL's high school reunion. A guy that was severely bullied in high school started a Facebook group to get the ball rolling on planning a high school reunion. He planned the venue, food, drinks, and asked everyone pay a ticket price to cover it all. He organized the money go into a provided bank account, received 200 people's HS reunion dollar dues and off. Never to be heard of again. I've never laughed so hard in my life. Story 15, apparently, every year my brother's graduating class gets together at this one neighborhood bar over Thanksgiving. It's not a formal thing, but anyone can come, and they all have a few drinks, and it's totally normal. I literally had no idea about it, and apparently my brother didn't either, because 3 or 4 years ago we showed up to get a drink together alone, and his entire graduating class of 50-ish people were there. Now, my brother was super nerdy and kind of an awkward kid, but the Marines in college turned that around. And now he's an outgoing, sociable guy. Coming out of the closet once he hit 23 helped too, since he was comfortable in his own skin and it showed outwardly. Thing was, no one seemed to know he was gay. And this is small town in the Midwest where there's nothing else to do but gossip, and since no one leaves, everyone knows everyone else. I literally spent all night cringing, while my brother dodged the advances of a bunch of girls aggressively hitting on him. Since the dating pool is the same guys they went to high school with, and he was fresh meat, they were all coming on super strong, and it was bad. Then everything got even worse when he told them he was living on the East Coast because he was gay and married, and his husband's job was there. Story 16, it was a party with all old high school people at it. Not sure if people actually have reunions anymore, but it ended up the same effect. I met up with an ex, and an ex-buddy of mine kept saying about how we would be perfect back together. It was just stupid for a ton of reasons, and dude kept pushing. First, I was married, didn't bother this dude. He said we should just bang and not tell my wife. Second, she's a lesbian, no interest in men. I knew this already, and she trusted telling me even though I think she kept it private. But this guy pushed and pushed, and when she said she liked girls, he just told her to bring her girlfriend along. I don't even know the guy's endgame, but he looked like a total idiot, and I'm pretty sure he made my ex feel pretty uncomfortable. Then I had to feel uncomfortable when I finally told him off. Story 17, probably the reunion itself. Our 10-year was in 2015. I did not attend, as I got roped into helping salvage a four-wheeler from the river that a couple buddies had found. If you're interested, the guy who kept it got it running again for about 1,000 worth of parts and work hours score. So for about 3 or 4 months leading up to the reunion date, a few of the popular girls from our class started a Facebook group to organize everything. And it seemed to be going really well. People had moved all over the country, but were saying they were moving their schedules around to attend. There was talk of renting an event hall on the fairgrounds. One girl's family, now in a local restaurant, and offered to put up that venue for an after-hours thing, etc. Everyone seemed really into it, and for what I could see, all seemed ready and willing to put behind them whatever petty grudges high school BS had existed 10 years before, comes to the morning of, and absolutely no one has committed anything. And in fact, it's almost complete radio silence on the FB group. Someone suggests that since we have no place reserved, should everyone just meet at the bars downtown and go from there? So it was that exactly 7 people showed up and played oversized Jenga. They at least looked like they had a good time, but what a letdown. I was initially a bit bummed about knowing I was missing our reunion, but when I saw the turnout on Facebook when I got back into cell range, I wasn't that disappointed anymore. Story 18, mine is in a few months, but the awkwardness has already started. First, I never had any plans to go. Things like that really aren't my speed. I'm not a mingler, and I always want to leave right away. Besides, I'll be away on military orders by that time anyway, so there's no way I can go. So a few weeks ago, I get added to my School 10 Here reunion page on FB by someone I don't recognize. Immediately think nope, and leave the page, then don't think about it again. I got a phone call a few days later from an unknown number. Not unusual since lots of people call me for work stuff. I answer and get this really enthusiastic OMG, HI. ITS name, how are you? I apologize and tell her I think she has the work number. I don't know anyone with that name. She says my whole name and says she got my number from a friend from school. She was the class president, but I, honest to God, didn't remember BER. She asks about the reunion. I politely tell her I'm not going. I have other obligations. She says I don't know if that will work. They'll be in touch and hangs up. I'm like, WTF? But whatever, a few days later I get added back to the same group by her. Again, I leave it. Not 30 minutes later I get a phone call from her. She wants to know why I left the group again. And again, I tell her I have other obligations. She told me that you don't skip reunions. We've planned this for years. You'll be there, so sarcastically, I said, okay, well, save me a spot then, and up. A third time I'm added to this group. I'm like, FFS, and leave again. I get a call, and this time she's calling to tell me that my ticket and dinner money are due by the end of the week. I politely remind her that I'm not going. She gets snooty and informs me that the venue and catering have already been reserved and that I will need to pay for my meal as the fund would not cover it. Once again, I remind her that I was never attending and that it isn't my fault that she paid in advance without a proper count. She then told me you don't have choice. It's already paid for, so you have to be there. I said, all right, by wrong name, and hung up again. I ended up blocking her on FB, ignoring her calls, and leaving the group 2 more times when other members of the reunion committee added me back in. TLDR class president that I don't remember won't take no for an answer. Story 19, when my lady teacher came up to me, kissed me on the cheek, and told me she loved me. She was very drunk. I felt very awkward. Edit, no, she wasn't hot. She was old. One spell corrected a Christmas card I gave her, and the night of the formal smelt strongly of booze. Story 20, when I was like 6, I went to my dad's small town 30-year reunion. His ex-fiancée, not my mom, was dressed in her prom dress and kept talking to me, saying she should have been my mommy. Even then I knew that was weird. Keep your crazy in, lady. Story 21, a kid in my class 1982 was hit by a car during our junior year and wound up in a persistent vegetative state. We had heard bits and pieces of information about him in the years after, but none of it sounded reliable. He was dead. He was still in a coma. He had come out of it. He was normal. He had become a born-again Christian. He lived at home and couldn't do anything for himself, you name it. We had heard it. Every reunion, there's still misinformation being passed around about the guy. In our 10-year reunion program, he was on the in memoriam page. Then it was pointed out he wasn't dead. Last fall, we had our 35th reunion, and he was announced along with the let's take a minute to remember our departed classmates. And then others pointed out that they thought he was still alive and living in Florida now. I don't think we'll ever find out the truth. Not that it matters, though. He was anyway. Story 22, at our 15th, they asked, then gave out prizes for the person who had traveled the farthest to attend, traveled the least far to attend, had the newest car, the oldest car, the youngest child, the look on MC's face when he realized what asking for the oldest child would mean. Story 23, 2 of our classmates passed away before our 5-year reunion. One of the girls organizing the event thought it would be a good idea to make cardboard cutouts of their faces, as if they were truly still here with us. The worst part was that people got drunk and started toting them around, taking pictures with them. It was up. Story 24, the lighting was dim. We were old, and some nitwit decided to let people scrawl their own name tags, which then hung on lanyards at crotch level. Nobody could hear anything over the snot-nosed DJ blasting Eye of the Tiger, and trying to figure out who you were talking to was pretty awkward. Story 25, for us younger folk, will there even be a physical reunion? Somebody made a graduating class of 20XX page like a year after graduation, which has like one post for a few months, and then have been absolutely dead for several years now. Story 26, at my 10-year reunion, it was more everyone getting really pissed. At the 20th, there were a few people seemingly bitter at those who had done pretty well in life. Odd, really. Story 27, got invited by Facebook message, were not friends on FB, by one of the girls who made pretty much the whole time I was there a living. Didn't attend, obviously, because everyone I wanted to keep in touch with I did. But got sorry, we miss you, hun. We should do lunch soon message, but why, selective memory, Story 28, my 10-year, was in 2015. I ended up at a table surrounded by my childhood bullies, all of them very apologetic, and asking me who they should vote for and why is it Bernie. It was super surreal. Story 29, I didn't go to my 10-year, but drama unfolded on Facebook in the planning stages. One guy decided the official reunion wasn't good enough, so he planned a competing reunion and tried to siphon people off of the other. When people started posting confusion to the event page, the argument between the two reunion leaders went something like 80 comments deep. The best part is that the then current principal, who had been a popular teacher when we were students, actually had to step in and mediate. It was hysterical. I had been on the fence about going since I stayed close to my good friends in high school, and Facebook kept me informed about anyone else I cared to know about. But that whole thing sealed it for me. Edit, I didn't go. It's true what they say about 10-year reunions, nobody has changed. Story 30, we had a 1-year reunion. It was basically we're all home from college. Why not all go out? We were there no longer than 20 minutes, and one of the guys turned to one of the girls and said, "Nice to see you're still," a hit the fan after that. It was not out of the blue whatsoever. The reaction was more of that was fast. Story 31, I went to my 40th. I now live on the West Coast, and the school is in NJ. Met up with a sweet girl that I had dated off and on in school. But nothing more, she is widowed. After a few, she asked me why we never had, and what? It was a come on that I did not follow up on. Story 32, I went to mine with my roommate. Everyone thought we were married, or something, a male, she's female. When we started dancing with other PPL girls would look over my shoulder at my roommate, and then slowly dance away from me. It wasn't like I was getting all close or anything. On the flip side, this one dude just stopped dancing with my roommate and left without a word. When she came to tell me about what happened, we both turned to see that he was making a beeline for the exit. After telling this to a mutual friend, it was pointed out that we probably looked like swingers, lol. We still laugh about it to this day. Story 33, probably what I said to a guy I barely even talked to. He was lanky, has jacked teeth, and bad acne. Not why I didn't talk to him. We just never had a lot of the same classes and were in different activities. He came up to me at the reunion, said who he was, and told me I looked great. I replied, "You do too. I barely recognize you. You changed so much." The second it was out of my mouth, I was apologizing. I felt so bad, but he laughed it off. Story 34, graduated in 1962. Never went to any of the reunions, didn't even know about them until the 50th in 2012. I'd been in odd places in the world, encountered a classmate 50 years later. He gave me the roster. Most of the people who went had never left the small farm town. Of the people who could be tracked, over half the males were dead. Vietnam, drugs, AIDS, and all the random bullshit. I was nobody in high school, but I still seem to be on the green side of the dirt. Story 35, not my high school reunion, but my mother's. She walked in and was saying hi to a few of the women when one of them dragged their husband over. In a very loud voice, she said, "You remember pulsing catbutts, Mom? Her brother was the one that fired you last month." My mom ended up avoiding them the rest of the night. Story 36, 5-year reunion. Took my husband, guy who liked me freshman year, then never talked civilly to me again, told me he was going to die alone and unloved behind a dumpster. Note he had been a popular football player. I was a social outcast. Story 37, actually, my high school reunion was the awkward thing. I didn't attend, and neither did very many people. Everyone pretty much hated each other. And from what I heard, only one clique turned up with the odd person from one or two others making an appearance. Even though I didn't go, it was still awkward when a girl who severely bullied me at school tried adding me on Facebook to invite me to the reunion. She still hates me to this day. So, I don't even know why she would have wanted me there, let alone directly contact me. Story 38, I went to my girlfriend's high school reunion with her. Now we're lesbians, so I was expecting someone to give weird looks, but I wasn't anything that bad. It got much worse. When we get to the reunion, we're having a nice time. People recognize my girlfriend. She was much more popular than me back in high school. No one really cares that we're gay until we meet Lady and her husband. When I say that I'm her partner, the lady asks, "Oh, like business partner?" Since my girlfriend has a good sense of humor, she laughs and tells her that no, we're dating. What does she do? Not apologize or just not mention it. Instead, she turns to her husband and says in Spanish, "I knew there's something wrong with her. My girlfriend is pale, but she's Mexican and speaks fluent Spanish." So she tells the lady to off. At the award portion of the night, we had pretty much forgotten the... Turns out that had been the organizer of the event and was doing the awards. We laugh at some of the humorous awards, and then we get to my girlfriend's award. Can you guess what it was? Biggest. Long story made short, I am escorted out by security, leaving with a nose. TLDR is offended by my lesbian relationship and gives my girlfriend the biggest award, and I beat the up. A 38-year-old woman wearing a purple and black tutu spelling, a 311 t-shirt, green and black stockings, and pigtails. They'll give her credit for keeping to her style. But that was lame, and 97 to it friend just reminded it was an Eve 6 t-shirt, but I'm leaving it because they are equally embarrassing. Story 39 of my 10-year reunion, one of the good-looking but not very bright guys from my class argued WTH me that we had an HS. After 10 minutes of me trying to explain to him that we had never had, I realized that he was thinking of my friend's sister, not me. He then was like, "Well, we can fix that." I declined and left. He went 10 years not knowing who he had with. I'm not touching that with someone else's, much less me own. Story 40, my time to shine. The beautiful cheerleader twins got so wasted at our 20th reunion, one of them puked on the table, and the other got so drunk she fell out of the photo booth. Their daughters had to carry them out. Story 41, went to wife's reunion. Introduced myself as George Michael. I was only there 3 weeks. I was bullied, so I left, but invited me. Some people actually bought the story. Story 42, in part of this story. I didn't find it awkward, but the other party sure as did. Our 10-year was at a winery, and then after, those who were still down for some drinking went to a local dive bar. At the bar, I was perusing my beer options and went with a shandy. It was delicious. So I'm chatting with a former classmate and his fiancée at the time. I'm pretty sure they broke up. But IDK, he excuses himself to use the bathroom. We're left standing there. Her, "Oh, what are you drinking?" Me, a shandy. I felt like it was the most homosexual beer option at the bar. Her stammering, "Oh, is that something in your life?" Me, "Oh yeah, I'm hella gay." Her, "Oh." She wanders off. My friend, who was standing nearby, apparently overheard it and started cracking up for a good 2 minutes. Story 43, had a 10-year reunion last year. Things are going well at this low-key local bar. Things shut down about 1 a.m. However, everyone is having fun and doesn't want to shut it down. Turns out the old-school Captain Smart dude, not particularly socially intelligent, though, says let's head back to his place to kick on. Tells the whole grade 100 to 150 people to drink what they want, including his dad's Blue Label scotch, which he thought was the cheap stuff, ended up costing him several thousand. And apparently his dad, rather understandably, wasn't stoked. Feel bad for him, but I have to laugh. I remember even trying to warn him that night, but he was riding the social popularity endorphin high, I suspect. Story 44, been to 2. At my 5th, I got shithouse drunk, passed out in my car at the campground we rented out, and woke up to a couple of my longtime buds shaking me out of my car while shirtless. I never woke up so confused in my life. Then my 10-year, only awkward thing I can remember was a lot of drunken political talk, which led to me getting, you guessed it, shithouse drunk to avoid it. Must have worked. Don't remember much of the rest of that night. Story 45, the only slightly awkward thing was noticing that even a decade after high school, the room was inadvertently divided into cliques, one group sitting around one table, another group going outside to smoke, etc. My reunion, though, was free of awkwardness and/or drama, at least as far as I could tell. Maybe my experience is unique because I like my class and my high school years were pretty happy ones. Story 46, went with my now wife to hers. It was a small class, and she had a pretty small group of friends who she hung out with. Tickets were like $200 each, open bar, food, DJ, etc. Day before, she finds out the 2 people she was really looking forward to seeing couldn't make it. Dave, another friend, got in an accident and couldn't make it, and the last one just didn't go. So we ended up sitting at a table basically by ourselves. She got a bit drunk and was the person who dances by themselves all night person. I'm pretty sure we won't be going to any more of her reunions. Story 47, reading this solidifies my decision to have not and won't go to class reunions. Them 5-year reunion, basically it boiled down to what do you do for work, and if you had anything lucrative, people wanted to be your best friend and try and get connections. Story 48, for our 10th reunion, a quiet but good-looking member of our class was in very high heels and short mini. Apparently, she was wearing no underwear due to her being compelled to do so by her perverted exhibitionist partner who had a need to show her off. In high school, she was a quiet and rather pure young thing. It was sad, but definitely caught everyone's attention. Story 49, my 10, was in 2015. One of the popular girls back then organized it through FB and made a group, inviting a ton of people and asking them to invite others who she didn't have added. Long story short, there was a ton of unnecessary drama in the group, people who still held on to 10-year-old grudges and whatnot. Some lived too far away and couldn't make it anyway. I was added by a friend who I still talk to, but hardly ever see again. At first, I thought, cool, I'll get to see some people I haven't seen in a decade. The conversations and comments slowly but surely made me think twice about going. The day after the reunion happened, a very hurt and annoyed host posted in the group, then disbanded it, apparently, after all her hard work and such. Out of 200 possible people, only 14 showed up. The FB group seemed to have turned people off from going. The organizer was a total anyways. She once claimed a friend of mine had tried to her and take advantage of her. He was gay. Story 50, 10-year HS reunion for my wife was strange. I showed up carrying a full set of camera gear, just in case, and they said it'd be great because the photographer they'd hired had bailed. There was absolutely no dancing. Of all the women there, over 34 were pregnant or had been pregnant within the past few months. So there wasn't much drinking anyway. I was rather horrified to see one of my classmates downing about 3 glasses of wine while having a huge baby bump, as she apparently didn't give a. The organizers were so pissed off at the whole ordeal of organizing that they agreed to never host a reunion again. Story 51, at my 10th, a guy who, in school, had been a very popular, preppy dude, star of the baseball team, etc., turned up looking like Homer Simpson and spent the evening trying to flirt with all the women. At one point, I saw him with an arm draped around 2 girls at once and with a beer in each hand. Story 52, my 10-year reunion, was in 2016, except no one cared about it. So we didn't have one. I'm pretty sure there was a casual get-together at a bar that was semi-planned, but then no one cared about that either. So it also didn't happen. So that's the awkwardness. No one cared enough to bother. My grandma faithfully attends hers and couldn't believe it when I told her no one cared about ours enough for us to have one. Story 53, it was my dad's 20-year high school reunion in a small town where everybody knew everybody and everybody knew everyone's business. So when the former high school sweethearts, now bitterly divorced 10 years, both show up drunk, everyone knew was going to go down. But that's not the real story I'm going to tell. It was all the dripping-nosed turd goblins that followed their parents there. Like with dogs, if you get too many in an open area, these meat paperweights form a pack and went on the hunt. There were somewhere between 10 and 20 of them, but let me tell you, it felt like we were facing all the munchkins of Oz. The oldest had to be about 8, and had a cold, hard gaze almost as dull as the rubber ball he threw at our shins. The adults, meanwhile, were still watching the drunk drama unfolding. We tried to stay away from them, but they didn't need to be faster than us when they outnumbered us 4-1. I don't remember how it happened. It was all a blur, but my brother went down. There were prepubescent bum smudges everywhere, and my brother looked like he was about to punch one, but stopped. These miniature Viking raiders were children, and no matter how much he wanted it, he couldn't feed them his knuckles without becoming the villain of the story. In frustration and tears, he went to our parents for protection, and a teenager fleeing to his parents because the little kids were mean to him was the most awkward thing I've seen at a high school reunion. TLDR, terrifying small children chase teenagers and make them cry. Story 54, I didn't actually go to my 10-year, but they decided to make it a 3-day event. The first night, Friday, was a pep rally bonfire before the homecoming football game. The second event, Saturday, was at a bar for dinner and drinks. And the third and final event, Sunday, they were invited to a church service at a church that one of the alumni was the pastor. Story 55, me and my best friend, I decided to go to our 10-year reunion together. I was joking around the whole way, saying things like, let's go see who got fat and ugly since school. We arrived, and everyone looked great. I was easily the chubbiest person there. Story 56, I graduated from a small-town school where my dad taught for 30 years. He had passed away a few years earlier, and it was a big deal to the district. They let school out early so teachers could go to his funeral. People that were in the area all knew that it happened. One woman asked me how he was doing and what he was up to. Her husband was teaching at the school when he died. She then asked me the same question she asked just prior to that, so that was kind of awkward. Story 57, my 25-year reunion was last year. They did all the planning via a Facebook group. I did not join the group, but could see the activity I was scrolling through, and a few months prior they had done a memorial post where they listed all the dead classmates, someone I haven't seen or spoken to in 25 years and didn't know well anyway, reported me as dead. The kicker, someone I was friends with on Facebook liked the post. I unfriended her. Story 58, in the country from They Aren't Really a Thing. A bunch of the popular girls who generally made anyone they didn't deem worthy feel like all through high school organized a 20-year reunion for ours a few years ago. They made a group on Facebook, sent tons of messages for a year before the event, got old teachers involved, etc., etc. About 10 people showed up. I was not one of them, but the photos looked super awkward. Story 59, so the wife drags her husband to her class reunion. Wife, honey, see that guy over there? I broke up with him right after high school graduation. Husband, the drunk guy. Wife, yes, he started drinking after I broke up with him and hasn't stopped yet. Husband, wow, that's a long time to celebrate. Story 60, the whole thing was just awkward. People were trying to show how much more successful they are than everybody else. Some even going so far as asking people what their salaries were. I skipped out early and never went to the following ones. Story 61, what I found awkward funny was how friendly people were. The people I didn't like or hang with were suddenly my BFFs. People were saying how hot I was, how good I was at sports, how funny and smart I've always been, etc. I felt like telling them how much I could have used those positive comments in high school, but heads. Story 62, I was in the first integrated high school class in 1971 for our 10-year reunion. The organizers did not invite any of the black students. I haven't been back. Story 63, for our 10-year reunion, we ended up skipping the awkwardness of actually meeting up and just had it collapse mid-planning. The girl in charge of putting it together got incredibly sick. She's since recovered. So then the planning went to some people that nobody really remembered from high school. That might sound weird, but we had a graduating class of close to 1,000 kids. And the people who took over planning were people who never interacted with anyone I still spoke to. We're going to try again for our 15th in 2 years.